I am recording this. I am recording this, and we'll send out a link likely tomorrow with the recording link for anyone who wants to rewatch it again. So please feel free to use the chat to ask questions. I have my colleague Maureen on the line who can answer questions in chat during the training. And I'll pause every once in a while just to see if there's anything I missed, but then at the end of the training, we'll have time for questions as well. If there's anything that didn't get covered in the chat, and I'll stay after the training too if anyone had any questions. Maureen, feel free to interrupt me if there's something coming in like people can't hear or my computer disconnected, because I am home and I have no idea how the Wi-Fi will be. And for those of you on the call, so you know that there's also, you can also dial in if you're having trouble with your internet connection. There's a phone number that you can call, which I think when you joined, it lets you choose, but you can also, let me go back to that PowerPoint just in case anyone has trouble. If you click on the little arrow, which is right here next to the unmute button, there's an option that says switch to phone audio. And by clicking on that, it'll give you the phone number and the meeting ID, and you can call in with your phone. This is helpful for students too. But I know this isn't a Zoom training, but just so that you can hear all the information that we're giving. Okay. So before we jump into Brightspace, I'm just gonna mention a few things. One reminder is that on our Brightspace resources page, that's brightspace.ccc.edu, we have lots of information for you, and there's some information for students. One thing I want to highlight is this link for Zoom resources. If you have any more questions, a lot of you have probably already attended Zoom trainings, and this may be your second time attending a Brightspace training. There's Brightspace resources and our, of course, IT support, but then the training calendar. You can attend as many of these as you want. We're offering them throughout next week and the following week. And every day we're putting more trainings up, so check back often. Because we're trying to get, you know, everyone comfortable with what they need. Also, there's this nice little link here that is talking about if you're new or fairly new to teaching online, start here. And this page has a lot of resources about how to plan out the rest of the semester, how to, you know, kind of figure this whole thing out. There's a lot of resources on here. And you've probably already seen this article, but there's this wonderful blog post called "Please Do a Bad Job of Putting Your Course Online." And of course it's satirical, but the, hold on, I'm just gonna make sure, yeah, I am recording. This article does a really good job of reminding you that you're not building an online class and you're not teaching students who you can expect to be ready for an online class. And that it really puts things into perspective about what it is that you can do, you can try, but be aware of, and be, you know, flexible with your students and with yourself. That this is the time to kind of remind yourself that we're all in this together, and it's time to be flexible and less rigid, and just getting, we're all trying to get through this together. So I highly recommend that article. I think it's fantastic. And actually, I just saw a YouTube video today of an instructor. I don't know what university he's with, but he, to the music of "I Will Survive," he wrote a song about teachers basically being told in 2 days to get your courses online, and it's really fun. I'll try to share that in the chat later. Okay. Let me just move some of my windows around. Okay, so into Brightspace. Where we're gonna start is, I'm starting as though we're very basic here. And again, I have so many windows, so bear with me, okay? Okay, so to start, how we get to Brightspace. Under our student tools, there's a link directly to Brightspace. This is on our CCC website, and under faculty and staff, there's a link right to Brightspace there. You can also go there through my.ccc.edu. You'd see a link directly once you log in, both you and your students. Or if you remember brightspace.ccc.edu, that's the direct link, and it'll get you there directly. And then you log in with your CCC username and password. You can also access this on your phone or tablet the same exact way. So you don't need an app to use Brightspace on your phone, and your students don't need an app to use Brightspace on their phone. They just open an internet browser on their phone and they can access brightspace.ccc.edu. That being said, there is an app called Pulse, Brightspace Pulse. And what that is useful for, and something that you can let your students know about, is that it does give them notifications every time something changes in the course, or you add new content, or you put an announcement up. They'll get push notifications through the Pulse app. And so that can be helpful to keep students kind of constantly engaged. But they don't need that app to use Brightspace on their phone. Just want to clarify that. So once you log into Brightspace, and I'm just going to change my role here so it looks more like an instructor. Once you log into Brightspace, this is what your course looks like, or this is what your homepage looks like. You're going to see pinned courses on the dashboard on your homepage here. And sometimes you won't always see your current courses on this page, because either you may have unpinned them, and that's this little icon here, or they're new courses and they just didn't pin themselves. So if you can't find a course that you know you're teaching, you can click on this button at the very top that says select a course. And all the ones on the top are pinned, and those are the ones that are showing on your homepage. But if you scroll down, and you'll notice I have a lot of pinned courses, but if you scroll down to the ones that are in a whiter color where they're not highlighted, those are courses that are still your courses. They're just not pinned to the homepage. So if you want them showing up on the homepage, you can click on this little pin icon here, and then they'll appear on your homepage. A couple of other items up here in the mini nav bar that are going to be useful to you. This first icon here is email or instant messaging. So just a note with this, instant messaging in Brightspace is more of internal messaging. The word instant messaging is misleading. It's more of an internal message back and forth inside of Brightspace that doesn't get sent out to student emails or your emails. So keep that in mind. That's instant messaging. Email, I'm not going to recommend that you access email from here, but when you're in the class, I'll show you how to email students from your class list. And the only time you would really use this email button here from the mini bar is if you want to look at your sent messages. Because sometimes you want to know, well, I know I sent that from Brightspace and students are saying they didn't get it. Did I maybe forget to send it? You can click on this email and there's a little sent mail button when you go there. We're not going to spend much time on that today. These two notifications here are really helpful for your students. They'll have a little orange dot if there's new announcements or new discussion posts that have been posted, or a new grade has been posted. So these little notifications you might sometimes see too if you're enrolled in a class as a participant. And then of course where your name is, I do encourage you to kind of look through these settings, your profile. You can add a picture to make it a little bit more personal. Your notifications, this is more important for students. You can encourage your students to set up their notifications so that they get an email or a text message when new things are added to the course. And then there's other settings and things like that that you can look through in here. Let's dive right into the course. Let me just make sure I've covered all my points before I do that, my pre-points. Oh, yes, and I do want to remind you everything that we're going over today. It's not what you must do, it's what you can do. So especially as you're trying to navigate this entire situation that we're in, understand that Brightspace is not the only way that you can do this. If you're not comfortable with this tool, but you are comfortable with email, you can certainly communicate with your students via email instead. That can be harder to manage because if you're having students submit their assignments via email, it can be a lot, but it's absolutely a thing that you can do if you're not comfortable jumping into this. So I just want to throw that out there, that Brightspace is not the only way, but it's this fabulous tool that we already have, and many of you have gone through foundations training and have some idea of how it works, that this training may help you feel a little bit more comfortable with it. Okay, so logging in. All right, so accessing a course. So we're going to jump right into a course, and I'm going to access this blank course that I currently have. You probably have a course with material in it already. So this is my course homepage. The course home is different than content. It's basically a what's new and what's due in Brightspace. And so students are going to land here, And they'll likely view any announcements that you have because those show up right here on the course home, and then any updates that you might have. Of course, we have this student overview video that's been here all the time for students. Sorry, I'm getting a message that my internet is down. So someone come on if I break up. So the video is always here, and then under updates, they'll see if there's a new assignment that's due, if there's a quiz to take, if there's how many discussion posts there have been. So this is kind of that information that's going to be in your student's face of like things to do. However, it's not all of the material of your course, and that's where we're going to get into the meat of this is under content. But before we get into that, I'm first going to go across these navigation bar items and explain them a little bit more in detail. And we're going to post a new announcement later before we kind of move on from here. Because the two big things is how to communicate with your students. That's like number one is how do I get communication out to them when I don't have all of their emails or phone numbers or whatever. So real quick, so let's start with the course home. So on the course home where I have announcements, to add a new announcement, there's this beautiful create an announcement button here. But once I build my new announcement, that will go away. So I'm going to get in the habit of using this drop down arrow and clicking new announcement. Now these announcements can be very similar to if I wanted to send an email to students where I'm like, hey, this is what we're doing this week, or hey, don't forget, you need to read XYZ. You can use the announcements in a way of just kind of like bringing up information to students that they see the first time they log in. One note I will say, because the question comes up a lot, is announcements don't automatically get emailed to students. So if there's an announcement that you post and you also want to make sure everyone gets that in an email, I would copy the contents of that announcement and then send it as an email, which I'll show you in a little bit. So in this case, for my announcement, I'm going to say, coming up week of March 23rd, since we're all getting started, and I might put in my content is my message, like welcome or hello students, I know it's been a crazy whatever, this is our plan for moving forward, or this is what I want you to do. I want you to come to Brightspace and check the announcements every day and click on content every day, or whatever it is that you might be. It's basically just an announcement. In this case, I'm going to say, I can't wait to work with you through this magical time. There's a lot of settings that you can set. You can create these announcements in advance, so you can schedule them to start in a week or to post on Monday instead of today if you'd like, using these availabilities. But really, if you just want to get the information out, you just need a headline and your content. There's also a lot of options that you have in this thing called the HTML editor, and I'm going to kind of mention them here, but know that it's not just available to you in announcements. Anywhere that you have this HTML editor, you can do the things that I'm doing. But under this first icon here, insert stuff, is where you can add files to this information. You can add a video note, which is you just talking just like we are right now, but not using Zoom, but recording a video of yourself, kind of just reassuring students. It's a nice built-in option for that, and you can add links in that same way, or YouTube videos. You can also insert images using this second icon, and then this third icon, which is a quick link, is a nice easy way to link to material that we might add later in the course. And what I mean by that is if I click on that, I can link to an assignment. I'm going to mute someone. Oh, Maureen, I'm going to mute you. I'm going to link to an assignment that I've already created so that students can access that assignment right from the announcement. So the quick links are really helpful for that. And this will make more sense once we start building out content. But that's the new announcement. I need a headline, my information that I want to post to the students, and then I'm going to click publish. This takes me to my assignment announcement tool page, where it's just going to list all of my announcements. But if I want to see it where I had built it, I'm going to click back on the course home, and it'll see my first announcement right there. So I just needed my header and my content for that announcement. The second big way to email contact your students is through emailing the class list. If you click on the class list, You will see a list, the roster of your entire class. The easiest way to email the entire class is to click on this button here called Email Class List. And the reason I say this, as opposed to this other option of selecting everyone and then hitting email, is that if you have more than 20 students and you forgot to extend the page here to show more than 20 students, you're not going to be emailing all of your students. So I recommend, that's why this beautiful, beautiful Email Class List button is here, is to click on that. And I only have one student in this class as an example, but it'll give you a list of all those students in your class telling you that that's who you're about to email. And then this is a little counterintuitive, but you click send email, even though you haven't written your message yet. And that'll pop up the compose new message box where you can then put your message right in the body of that email. So here, it'll BCC all of your students so that they won't see that the email is going to all of everyone. You can direct it as though it's an individual email, like dear student, yada yada, and write the messaging. And this is where you can paste that same announcement that you did on Course Home. You can paste that information here. You can also attach files at the bottom. So if there's something you want to send them in bulk, you can attach those here too. And then lastly, the send button is at the very top. It's not at the bottom. Sometimes people go looking for it. After you write your message and you've done everything that you wanted to say, the send button is at the very top. So I'm going to close this. So that's sending an email. So two big ways of communicating with your students are announcements and then email through the class list. Going down the line, so I'm going to click back on the Course Home. Clicking on the Course Home always takes you back to this what's new and what's due page. Let's go down the line. Course Admin is the next item in the toolbar, and this is your place. This is kind of your back end view of Brightspace. This, or your course, really. This is where you have access to all of the tools that you may ever want to need and use and explore. And I do encourage you to kind of click around in here when you have time, and now is probably not that time. But it's kind of that back end view. If there's anything that you're trying to explore, Course Admin is where it would live. I'm just going to direct your attention to the site setup section called Course Offering Information. And this is where your course name and other course details live, but it's also where at the bottom your course's start and end date will appear. In my course, it doesn't have a start and end date. But if you wanted to extend the end date, these are based on the start and end dates in CS9, but you certainly can change that end date to the future if you wanted to leave this course open longer. And so that's kind of the control place for your Brightspace course is Course Admin. Students cannot see this link at all. They see Course Home and then Content. So moving into Content. Content is really the body of your course. So in Content is where you're going to post all of your materials, is where you can create the assignments or discussions or quizzes that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And it's kind of like the one-stop place for students to get all the information. I will say, because of this training, I'm going to be moving towards this training in one very specific way of showing you how to add things. But I do want to note that there's many ways to do many things in Brightspace. And I'm just going to show you one because I think it's the most straightforward for someone who's very new to Brightspace. But if you've been taught a different way or you prefer a different way, that is absolutely fine. I'm just letting you know I'm going to be showing one specific way. So before I jump into content to kind of build out the things that we were talking about, I do want to touch on the other three items of the navigation bar. So assessments. I know that name is a little confusing for some of us, but you can think about it as like graded activities or things that students can interact with Brightspace with. So if I click on the drop-down of assessments, you can see assignments, discussions, quizzes. I'll stop there for a second because it's assignments. Assignments are things that students can submit to Brightspace. So if you need a place where students will upload a document or a PowerPoint or a picture of like some project, you would use assignments for that. Discussions, and we're not going to build them here, we're going to build them somewhere else, but discussions are used to replace like your in-class discussion. So let's say you guys are reading a book from for like, it's a literature class and you're reading a book for the semester, and this unit that you're on is one specific book, and you've been operating that way in class, where every week in class you spend the first half an hour discussing the book. Well, we can put that discussion on Brightspace, and they can respond to each other and post different topics and discussions around that topic. And then quizzes. Quizzes are not just for tests and quizzes in the way that we think about them, but it's anything that you may have and want to be auto-graded. So the easiest way to think about this is a quiz. So if I have, let's say, a reading quiz, and I want to build a quiz out with multiple choice questions or true, false, fill in the blank, those kinds of questions, I can build that right in Brightspace, and it can grade it automatically, so I don't have to go through and score every single one. Rubrics we're going to skip over, but if you've used a rubric before in your life, Brightspace allows you to build rubrics right in Brightspace, where you can grade using the rubric, but we're not going to talk about it in the context of today's training. And then finally, grades. So if you choose to use the grade book, everyone's at a different level. Some of those of you on this call may have used grades a lot. Some of you may have never used grades. Grades is a place where you can post scores on all of their activities and assignments. During today's training, when we build an assignment, a discussion, and a quiz, we're going to attach them all to a gradebook item, so that you're going to be building the columns in the gradebook as we go along. But you can also just add grade items to the gradebook. We're not going to be covering any of the things in today's training in great detail, but there's tons of resources on our Brightspace, resources.ccc.edu, where we have a link to everything that we have on grades, everything that we have on quizzes, everything that we have on assignments. We have an entire page with every article on that, and Brightspace has fantastic video tutorials on each of the tools we'll go through too. Okay, moving along, we've already talked about the class list. That's essentially your roster and how you email all of your students. The student support is there for students, how they access grades first, or they find out information about the libraries or the wellness center or tech support or on-campus tutoring. Now, in light of everything that's going on, most of these pages would probably indicate where students can get virtual support in the coming days. But right now, that is their kind of quick links to those CCC pages. And then lastly, under help, for you and for students, they can submit a ticket right from here, or they can access you can access the faculty knowledge base, and students can access the student resource site for more detail and information. So that's the nav bar at the top that you typically see in most of your classes. Now I'm going to pause here just for a minute so I can get my bearings before we start building content and then building the assignments, tests, and quizzes. Give me 1 second. And Maureen, are we good with chat, or is there anything that we should also clarify?
I think we're pretty good with the chat. We just have one question about blind copy emails, and students can't see the names of the other students in the class list. And
So
they can see the email addresses through the class list, but not through the email.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes. Yeah, students can see each other's names, like who all is in the class, and they can also email from the class list. But when you're sending an email to the class list, they just can't see that you sent that same email to everyone. So it's BC sync, just like when, Special Announce sends us all an email that we get, we're essentially BCC'd on that, so that we can't see who all is on it. Great. Okay. Okay, so moving right along into building content. So now, as you're thinking about, all right, I don't know how many more weeks left of the semester, 6, 8, I don't know. But you have so many weeks left of the semester, and you're thinking about, okay, I had all of these things that I was gonna do online. So maybe you had articles that you were gonna pass out in class, you have handouts. Maybe you had these discussions that you were gonna be talking about in class in terms of, discussing the reading or discussing an article and things like that. So thinking about, how do I get whatever I was gonna do in class, what are the things that I can put online, or what are ways that we can do this virtually? So that's the way we're thinking as we're kind of moving through these next few steps. So from content, and everything I'm going to show you today is going to be from content. You likely already have your syllabus up, since that is one of the requirements of every instructor. So you may already be familiar with this process of adding content. And that's why I've left this kind of blank course shell with the syllabus that I have to kind of give you that context. As you start creating content in here, you can create modules. So where it says add a module, I'm gonna use different modules for different things for this training. So for my first module, I'm gonna call this, you know, I can either call this course resources or handouts or material, or I can name it something like week 10. Let's pretend next week is week 10. I'm not quite sure what week it is for a typical 16-week semester that started in January, but let's pretend it's week 10. This might help me kind of orient students to, okay, this is where we're starting from. Or you can call this like first remote week or something like this, but I'm gonna call it week 10. And when I create a module, I just click right on that text that said add a module. I type in my title, and then I can either press enter on my keyboard or just click away. So if I press enter, it's going to create that module, and then I'm already in it. So here on the left-hand side is kind of how I navigate within different modules of content. So before I was on the syllabus, and that indicated here's the syllabus and everything I can add to the syllabus module. And now I'm in week 10 and everything I can add to week 10. So I'm going to start with just content. Let's say you're just ready to at least get handouts up on Brightspace, but you're not sure you're ready to collect things through Brightspace yet. This is a quick and easy place to add all of those materials. So think about if you have a YouTube video that you were going to show in class. If you have, like we said, a handout that you were going to hand out in class for them to kind of take home and read, or it was an article for them to read. Or it was a link, like you wanted them to go to the CNN website and read about, you know, one of the articles on the coronavirus and provide their feelings about it and what's going on with it and all of those kinds of things. So the first thing I'm going to show you is just adding content. In the upload create button, so every module has this upload create drop down, and it's where you can add new things. So upload files is when you want to add handouts. So that's what, like when you added the syllabus, you used upload files. Video or audio is if you want to add a YouTube link, or if you have an MP4 or an MP3 on your computer. Let's say you teach a music class and you have clips of music that you play in class. Well, now you can't play those in class, but you can upload them to Brightspace. So you can use this the video audio option to upload that MP3 file. I will click on this one just so you can see what that looks like. There's two tabs here. So if I'm adding video, if it was just a YouTube video that I want them to see, I would just paste that video right in here. Oh, and I wonder if I still have that cool video I found. Nope. But I could paste my URL. I do have a video I can.
It's in the chat.
Oh, you're
The
awesome.
Survive is in the chat.
Thanks. If I can find the chat again.
It's.
Oh, I don't see it in the chat. Maybe my chat hasn't refreshed. That's okay. Yeah, my chat might be frozen, but I do have a YouTube video that I can use. So when I paste a YouTube video in here, it shows you that it's embedding it right in the page. And this is great because students don't have to download the video then, but they can watch it right in Brightspace, either from their phone or their computer. So that's the Weber video link if I have a YouTube video. You can also upload. So in that example, I was saying if you're a music teacher and you have all these MP3s on your flash drive or on your computer, you can upload those MP4s or MP3s right here, and they'll play in Brightspace just like the YouTube videos would. So I'm just going to keep this one that I chose as an example so you can see what that looks like when it does upload. So it takes me to the page where I'm going to view it, but I'm going to go back to content so that you can see how that looks. So I added this video navigating Brightspace course. That was the video. And when students click on this, They can view it right inside of Brightspace, and this works fabulous on the phone, especially for YouTube videos too. And they can watch that right in here. So that's if you have content that you want to add, like video or audio content. Create a file. So going down this list, create a file. You might think that's uploading content, uploading files, but it's not. It's more if you want a page where you can write right on the screen for students, where you just want to provide information. So maybe like a list of things that they should do or something like that. And then create a link is if you did want them to go find an article, or if you have an article that you want them to read and it's on a website, you can paste that link using this create a link. And so then they have an access to those links there. So these are the four primary ways to add just material to your Brightspace course. So stuff that you may have shown in class on the smartboard, you can now just upload to Brightspace and they all have access to that material. Okay, now thinking about assignments, discussions, and quizzes, kind of switching. So these are more content-based, and then we're going to talk about more activity-based. So I'm going to add a new module, and let's say we're gonna start with assignments. So assignments in Brightspace are anything that you want students to submit to Brightspace. So if they're writing papers for the rest of the semester, or not for the rest of the semester, but if you had a paper coming up towards the end of the semester that they were going to hand in person, they can now hand it in online. This can also be presentations. So if they were supposed to create PowerPoint presentations for their final presentation or whatever it might be, they can upload those presentations. So assignments are used for anything that you need students to submit to you through Brightspace, instead of them emailing you everything and you having to figure out what assignment that was for. So to create an assignment, just like when we were creating content, we're going to use this upload create button. And if we scroll towards the bottom, we're going to see this new assignment. When I click on that, I'm going to see really two things that I have to do. I have to give it a title and I have to put in instructions. So perhaps this is like, let's say you want, like, every week students reflect on the reading personally, or let's say this was a paper that they were going to hand in this past week and then everything got canceled, so they have to turn it in virtually. You can call this whatever that assignment is called. So I'm going to call it paper 1, but this might be, globalization in US history, or whatever it is, whatever that assignment is. Then under submission type, there's two options that I recommend choosing here. There's the default is file submission. That's what I've been talking about all this time, where they write a Word document and they upload it, or they create a PowerPoint for their presentation and then they upload it. That's a file submission. There's also an option to choose text submission. And the difference is a file submission requires them that they upload something. So it's a document, a PowerPoint, an image, a video, whatever, that they have to upload the file. And a text submission is actually a box where they can type right on the screen. So think about this in the difference between like an official paper where they have to double space in a Word document versus I don't need them to write this as a paper, but I want them to do something. I want them to write like a small paragraph. I might just use a text submission so that they can type their paragraph right in the field. And the usefulness of that, again, is I can use my cell phone. So if I'm allowed to do all my typing right into Brightspace, then I don't have to worry about going and finding, Word online, so that because my computer at home maybe doesn't have Office. Although again, all of our students can download Microsoft Office for free. But it's when we're thinking about flexibility and that kind of stuff, text submission is really useful for that. File submission is if you want them to upload the Word document, or you want them to upload the PowerPoint presentation or whatever. And then after I choose whether it's going to be a file, I'm not going to talk about the other two options because that's really for a face-to-face class. Then you're going to decide whether or not you want to hide it from users now. Like, I would keep this hidden if I wasn't ready, like I didn't finish writing all my instructions, but I would unhide this just as a practice if I'm basically just creating all of these and they're ready for students to see whenever they need to see. The instructions in here can be as grand as you need them to be, as complete as you need them to be, or as slim as you need them to be. If you have the students already know what these assignments are and they just need a bucket to put them in, you really don't need a whole lot of instruction other than upload your paper to this assignment. If you have all the instructions on a Word document already, you can paste that information in here, or you can upload that information in here using insert stuff and adding from your computer. You can upload that Word document of instructions right in here. So I'm not going to have, I'm going to have instructions just upload, or yeah, upload your assignment here. When I click save, that's kind of it. My assignment's been created. I could go back to content, and students, as long as I unchecked the invisible box, whereas you can see this is visible, as long as I did that, students can upload this right now. Like, that's how easy it is. It's a title and instructions, and whether or not it's a visible and file or text submission. But if you wanted to attach this to the grade item, and what we're going to do when I show you how to create a discussion and a quiz is we're going to want to build those grade items right as we're creating. So when you get to this page, we're going to add a grade item down here in this assessment section. To do that, you're going to click right on the text that says add a grade item, and you're going to give it a point value. So let's say this assignment I know is 25 points. I got to move my toolbar. The next option is to ask, it's asking me to associate it with a grade item, but I don't have any grade items, so I have to create it. And that's exactly the process you would go through. You wouldn't be expected to have any grade items yet because you haven't built anything. So I'm going to click the plus, and when you do this, it's always numeric in this case because it has points. And I'm going to name it the exact same thing. So paper 1. I don't need a short name. That's just to make my grade book a little bit more condensed. But I do need to change the grade point value. Brightspace defaults to 10. So even though I put a 25 over here, when I go to create my grade book, I also have to put a 25 here in my grade item. So that's really important because it defaults to 10. I just want to say that again. And that's all you need for creating the grade item. A name and a point value is all you need. And then you click create. The last step is pressing save. If I don't press save here, I created a grade item and I created a assignment, but they're not tied together. So once I hit save, it'll say grade item assigned successfully. So now I know that those are paired together. So if I go back to content, I'm going to see now in my assignment module, I have this one paper 1 assignment, and it's ready for students to submit to. Just to give you a sense of what that looks like for students, I'm going to change my view. So if you click on your, you won't see as many options as I do. When you click on your name, you should only see the option that says student. And if I click on content, I'm going to see this navigation exactly the way I had it. Then you always, whenever you click on content, it takes you back to the last page that you were on in content. So I'm already in the assignment and I'm ready to do something with that paper 1. When I click on that, you can see I have this option to upload, record, or choose existing. We had some questions earlier about teachers who are speech instructors who want students to upload their speech, maybe record it on the camera. Students can actually record right into this assignment with video or audio, and so that's a cool way for speech instructors. But typically your students are just going to upload that file using that upload button and selecting wherever that file is on their computer. So that's the student view of assignments. I'm going to go back to instructor view. So that's assignments. Next, let's do an example discussion. So I'm going to create another module for my discussions. Discussions, as we were talking about, are used mainly for peer-to-peer asynchronous discussion. So this is exactly in a scenario where you want to create community amongst your students and give them a space to not only talk amongst each other about what's going on, but also to discuss activities that you had planned for your class. Discussions are a great way to do it because it allows students to communicate with each other. So the assignments are just a one way. They're to you. They're submitting that to you. No other students can see what they've submitted. Discussions are whatever the student posts, other students can see and reply to and respond to. There are restrictions that you can set up in discussions where you make it more private, meaning like it can be a group discussion that's separate from individual discussions so that they can only see the discussions that the groups are having. But we're not going to talk about groups so much in today's training because we just don't have the time. But there are resources, again, on groups on our Brightspace resources page. So to create a new discussion, very similar to assignments, we're going to go upload, create. We're going to click new discussion. And this page looks very similar to the new assignment. We're going to call it, I'm going to call this like a cafe, because I want one of my discussions to just be an open forum where they can talk about anything and it not be associated with a grade. This drop down here, I already have one in here, but yours would say no forum. Forums, this is one of those things in Brightspace that's different than how we typically think of discussions. Brightspace has, is it 4 levels to their discussion. So they have a forum, which is basically a grouping of discussion topics. Then they have topics, which is the actual topic of discussion. It's the actual place where students can communicate with each other. Then they have threads, which are the students' posts, and then they have replies. So we need every single discussion topic has to fall into a forum, but you only need one forum. Like you can just create a forum called discussions and all of your topics are inside of that forum. So in this case, I've already created one that was just called discussions, but if you had to create a new forum, let's say every week, this is a good example of this, like each week you want to have 3 different discussion topics, but you want to group them by the week. So I might create a new forum called week of March 23rd, just because I know there's going to be 3 different topics in there. And then this will be, you know, reading discussion for March 23rd. And then I might have another one in the same forum called, you know, assignment something for March 23rd, and another one. So forums are groupings, but you also don't need to get super caught up with that. You can create one forum called discussions and every single topic goes into that one forum. Okay, I'm gonna switch this back to discussions. Again, we have this hide from users. I'm going to unhide now just so I don't forget to do that later. And then the instructions will be the topic. Like, what do you want them to talk about in this discussion? So this might be, you know, do the reading for this week, or tell them what the reading is for this week. Read chapter 4, and then answer these questions. And they might be like opinion-based questions. And then each student, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and then each student will respond to that discussion in that way. So if I click save, again, when I get to this screen, it's going to have what I just created, which is my discussion topic. And then again, I can associate with a grade item. So I'm going to go through this process pretty quick because I want to make sure we have time for everything. I'm going to give it a point value. I'm going to create my grade item. So this is reading discussion. I might use a small name for that, reading discussion board. And then it was 10 points, so I'm going to keep it 10 points. And then I'm going to click save. So now going back to content, and I'll view it again as a student. The students will click on that topic and they'll see this start a new thread, and they post the same way you would. So they might say, you know, whatever the subject of it is, they can call it reading discussion for March 23rd. They can put their name in the title, whatever it is, and then their answers to 1, 2, and 3. And then they click post. When they're ready to reply to a peer, I'll pretend I'm another student. To reply, they have to click back on that discussion, and then they click on a topic of or a thread from a student, and then they can click reply to that thread. Okay, I'm going to exit student mode. So now That's we've done assignments and discussions. Let's do a quiz. So quizzes, again, I was talking about, are things that can be auto-graded. So you might already have quizzes created in Word documents that you would have handed out in class. So this is an opportunity for you to potentially rebuild those in Brightspace. I will say, and maybe Maureen can find the link for this, if you do have a lot of Word documents with a lot of questions, there are tools outside of Brightspace that can convert those into something that Brightspace can read, but you can't simply upload a Word document into the quizzes tool and it will not convert that to a Brightspace test. So I'm just going to say it again. You can't just upload a Word document into the quiz tool in Brightspace and expect it to convert it into a Brightspace quiz. You have to either recreate it in Brightspace in the manner in which I'll show you, or again, there's some outside tools that you can set it up in a specific way, and then you can convert it before uploading it to Brightspace that way. So I'm going to click the blue button, Upload Create, and then I'm going to click New Quiz. And again, very similar to assignments and discussions, I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this Quiz 10, or whatever quiz it was, whatever you're building in your class, whatever test you might have. This might be test 2, whatever it is. And again, I'm going to unhide from users at this point because I can set up restrictions later. And then any instructions here, these instructions for the quiz are typically like, this is a 10-question quiz, do your best, whatever that might be. I'm going to click Save. And again, brought to this screen once again, before we start building out all of our quiz questions, I'm going to associate with a grade item again, just so I don't forget that process. So I'm going to click on the add a grade item. And again, I don't have any grade items already. I'm just going to click plus. I'm going to name it Quiz 10. And let's say I know that that quiz is worth 15 points. I'm going to change my points. I'm going to click Create and then Save. So now I've created the container for my quiz, and now it's time to build my quiz. So we're not going to go through the entire process, but I do want to click on Quiz Setup because that's where we're going to start. And once you're on this screen, if we scroll down, it tells me, oh, this quiz is empty. So I'm going to click Add Edit Questions, and that's where I build out my quiz. Now, depending on if you have the new quiz builder set up, your view might look like mine, or it might look like the new quiz experience. I'm going to leave mine off for now just because I'm more comfortable with this page at this point. But when you click New, this is where you can see all the different question types that you can create. So just to keep in mind that true, false, multiple choice, multi-select, short answer, fill in the blank, matching, and ordering can all be automatically graded. So the majority of the tests for the question types can be graded automatically with Brightspace, but there's a few that require you to look at them and grade yourself. And so that would be mostly the written response questions. I think there may be another one in here. Written response, there may be another one, but typically written response is one that you have to grade manually, of course, because they're writing a big chunk. So I'm just quickly going to create a true false. So when I choose a true false question, it's just going to ask me what the question text is and then to select the right answer. It's very similar for a multiple choice, but the true false, I don't have to add all my answers in here. So I might say, Italy is in Europe. So this answer is true. So I would check that box there. And then I can change the point value of that if I wanted to. If all my questions are going to be a different point value, I can change that. But really, I can just click Save. And it'll basically build this list of all my test questions. Once I'm done building all of my test questions and I click Done Editing, it's going to take me back to this page where I have all of my questions set up. Again, I'm not going to go through the entire process of building quizzes, but because I've built this one, I am going to save and close so we can look at that as a student would. So viewing quizzes as students is different than discussions and assignments. You don't go into student view in order to preview a quiz in Brightspace. You have to stay in as an instructor and you have to click on preview. So you would preview a quiz, but not in student view. And by doing that, it allows you to bypass any restrictions you have, and then you can start the quiz just like a student would. So I'm viewing this exactly how a student would view that quiz. And then after I submit, it wants me to confirm again, and then I'll get my score. So same for students, they'll get this kind of view once they complete that quiz. Again, there's additional settings that you can set up with a quiz, but we're not going to go through all of those today. This is to get a basic quiz up and running. Okay. So that's quizzes. We have 5 minutes left on this training. I do want to show you how to add the Zoom conferencing tool, how to add that to Brightspace, because a lot of you have been going through those trainings as well. So if I add another module called Zoom, or I can call this, virtual sessions or whatever I might want to call that, this time we're going to existing activities. Under existing activities, there's something called external learning tools, because Zoom is actually outside of Brightspace. So we're bringing it in through an integration. So when I click on external learning tools, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and there you can see the Zoom link, and it puts that link right into Brightspace. Now, when I click on that, or when my students click on that, they're going to see whatever I've scheduled for this class. So as the instructor, you would schedule a new meeting, and then when that meeting is ready to begin, when you're scheduling a meeting right from inside of Brightspace, it's only available to those students inside of this course. Other students won't see the meetings that you've set up for this course. So you would start the meeting right from here, and students can come here and join the meeting right from here. There's many different ways to get Zoom information out to your students, but we wanted to show you how to add the Zoom link to your course in terms of that integrated piece where you can have recording sessions right inside of Brightspace and students can access it right from Brightspace. So I'm going to pause here with 5 minutes, and I'm going to take a look at my cheat sheet to make sure I covered everything. And while that's happening, I'm open to questions, or Maureen, let me know if there was anything lingering in the chat.
There was David asked about assignments being submitted as PDFs.
Oh yeah.
And that students can attach different files to your assignments if you've chosen file submission. If you've chosen the text box, they need to submit the file positions through insert stuff, right?
Yeah, although I ran into that issue yesterday where, because with Brightspace it's an either or, and I thought we had a workaround. If you chose text submission, they still can upload, but I didn't see the option yesterday. So for now, I'm going to say Brightspace is an either or. You can either allow them to upload a file or allow them to type right in, but you can't choose both options. You have to choose which option you're giving them. I feel like there's a workaround, but it didn't show.
There probably is, but too much stress.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to pause here. I appreciate everyone coming. I hope we were able to answer some of your questions. We are recording this, and I'll pause for the next 3 minutes for any questions that come on. If you've gotten everything you need, you're welcome to leave. At the end of or in your toolbar, there's a leave meeting in the lower right-hand corner, and you can leave that way. I'll stay on for a while afterwards, but I'll allow people to kind of add questions to the chat. And then for whoever's left, if you have unique individual questions, I'm happy to stay on for a little while.
We do have a question about closed captioning in Zoom.
Do you want to answer that or do you want me to?
You can answer it.
Okay. Let me see if I can take a screenshot of this. So there is, can you guys see my screen where I've clicked on the more and while I'm in my, you can't see my entire toolbar, but I've clicked on the more in my toolbar and there's this closed captioning here. Does this show up for you? Maureen?
Yes.
Okay. I just took a screenshot of this, so that's why it's in a window. But there, so Zoom does have a built-in closed captioning tool. I personally have not played with it, but it's there and it's doing like an auto transcript, so it's not a human that's doing it. However, if you have note takers, there's an option to give someone in the participant list note-taking ability or transcription ability, and they can, I don't know how it shows up because I've never played with it, but we can certainly send you more information on that. If you go to the zoom.us support site, you can find all of the information on this, or if you send me an email, I can try to send you a direct link.
How do students present in Brightspace with PowerPoints as a group?
So you can use it, like if you're, let's say you were doing class presentations. Now, again, because of the circumstance, we can't really require that, even though if we had class on a Monday, Wednesday at 2 p.m., we can't expect that our students are now still available Monday, Wednesday at 2 p.m. because they might have kids, they might have now work responsibilities, things like that. But you certainly can create, if the idea was that we're all presenting together, you would create a Zoom meeting for that, and your students can share their screen. So if I'm the presenter today, I would share my screen and show my PowerPoint and do my presentation. And you can certainly record that and then post that for other students to watch who weren't able to attend it. Students can also, hopefully that answered your question, but we can go into detail if it's a student, you know, recording themselves and then posting a link to that recording or putting it on YouTube or using a video note for that. Well, video note wouldn't work to show their presentation, but Zoom would work. I don't know if that answered the question. Can you add time limits for tests and quizzes? Yes, Robert, you can. I didn't go through those settings, but when you build, let me go back to that quiz. So when I was in that page where I was in the quiz setup, on the restrictions tab is where I can set like a start date, an end date, a due date, and then beneath that I can set timings. So there's all of these extra settings that there's many more settings than this, but we couldn't cover it today's training, but there are resources for it. But if I wanted to only allow, let's say 60 minutes, I would use it as an enforced time limit and change that to 60. And they have this thing called a grace period where if they're still working at 60 minutes, you can decide if they get maybe like a 1 minute of grace. And then in these settings of what happens after that 60 minutes expires, I recommend doing the middle one, which is to prevent the student from making further changes. Allowing the student to continue working really doesn't make sense in that you enforce a time limit. And then the last one, which is allowing the student to continue working, but you automatically give them a 0, is kind of harsh. So I recommend the middle one. Let me go back to chat to see if I actually answered your question. Yes, okay, good, I did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My question. Thank you very much.
Good.
And
how can we access this? Joy, I'll send the recording after we're, I'll keep recording until we're done answering questions, and then I'll send this recording out probably tomorrow.
Could you show how to do a Turnitin?
Yes, okay.
Assignment?
So going back to where my assignment, I have to close on my links. Going back to content. And going back to the assignment that I created. So when you create assignments when you create any of these things from content, assignments, discussions, or quizzes, they're showing up both in content and they actually go directly to the tools themselves. So if I click on assignment tool now, I'm going to see this paper one that I created in content. In order to make this a Turnitin assignment, you have to go to the tool because you can't enable Turnitin from content. So once I create all of my assignments in content, if I want to make those Turnitin assignments, I would come to the assignment tool, which is here, and then I'm going to edit this assignment from here. Once I edit this assignment, it's going to give me way more settings than I was able to do while creating from content. And there's a tab here called Turnitin. Once you're on the Turnitin tab, you're going to check the box that says enable grade mark for this folder. You have to enable grade mark in order to enable the originality check. And right now in this messaging, I'm only talking to people who even know what Turnitin is. So if you don't know what Turnitin is, we can talk about that after. So once you enable grade mark for this folder, then I also recommend you choosing automatically sync grades because it connects it back to Brightspace. And then you can check this enable originality check for this folder. That's how you enable Turnitin. I could click save and close if I wanted to. I can also, before I do that, if I want students to see their originality report, I would check that box here. And I can access more options and Turnitin here. And that will give you the other options that you used to have if you've used Turnitin in Blackboard. And then finally you click save and close. Once you do that, I'm still in the assignment tool. I see this new icon that says Turnitin has been enabled. And so that students still access it from content. I mean, they can access it from either place, but there's no indication to the student that they're turning it into Turnitin. It's all very seamless from the student perspective, but you've enabled it on the back end. Are there, I'm going to just look at the chat if there's a lot of discussion on closed captions. Yeah.
I know this won't, this link, it doesn't do it. There is for Turnitin questions. I know there's a bunch of Turnitin links up on the knowledge base too.
Yes, yes. On our knowledge base, if you click on, they've kind of changed our homepage to make it easy to find things for the situation we're in. But if you click on Brightspace resources, you'll see you can search for anything. So if I search for Turnitin, I'm going to see how do I create and manage revisions? How do I enable Turnitin on an existing assignment? That's what we just walked through today. How do I grade an assignment with Turnitin? How do I enter grades using Turnitin? Our Brightspace resources knowledge base, which Maureen helped build and create and made it what it is today. She was a huge part of that knowledge base, and we have so many articles thanks to her. Okay, I did. Okay, so Marge, you want to give a midterm for a mini class next week? Would I put it under quizzes? Yes, if it's something that you're like a test that you're building, quizzes is the equivalent term of test, something that is test or a quiz or automatically graded. It can even be used for homework, actually. If you, let's say you have like a homework handout that had a multiple choice and you want the system to grade it, you can put homework under quizzes too. But yes, if you're building a test like a midterm and it's with questions, you would use a quiz for that. I also got some questions about the activity feed. We didn't talk about the activity feed at all, but for it's actually a really interesting tool, which I've seen some people use it in very cool ways. The activity feed lives on the homepage at the very bottom, and it lets you kind of create like messaging right from here. So I can create a it's kind of like a blog. You can allow students to comment on it, but there's also an option to add an assignment from here. Now, what's cool about this is it puts it right on this homepage, and it creates it under the assignment tool also. So it's just like creating an assignment from content, but it actually is a little bit a simpler interface. But you can't build quizzes from here, if that was the question. Now that it can't be used for a mini quiz if I'm hearing the word quiz as in what I showed you with quiz question types like multiple choice, true, false, and something that can be automatically graded. But if you were using the activity feed as a place to kind of discuss, like you want to post a question and you want students to comment on that question like they would a blog, you can use the activity feed for that. But again, I don't think we have resources on the activity feed in our knowledge base, but on the Brightspace community, there's plenty of information on the activity feed. Let's see, any other questions that we didn't catch? Cool. Well, oh, hold on. Can I add images to quizzes for students? Yes, yes, yes. So this would be a take-home exam with format, or should I be fancy? Great question. Yes, you can add images to quizzes. So when you're building a quiz, and I'll go back into, I'll go from contents because it's the way that I taught. I go back in the quiz setup for that quiz, and I go to add edit questions. And let's do a new question. Let's say it's multiple choice. Anywhere where I can add question text, I still have my HTML editor like you saw before, but it's a little bit condensed. So in this, this icon here is my insert stuff, and this is where I can add, let's find an image. Pictures. Let's pretend this picture is from a famous artist. So here, oh wait, am I adding as a picture? Oh, sorry, I used the wrong insert. I want an image, right? Did I? Oh yeah, it is. I thought there was, okay, sorry. Starting again. Let's create a new file. Grad. There's my photo. So I can make this larger if, let's say this is from a famous artist, right? And the question is name the artist. And you would add your different, you know, Van Gogh, Tobin. Maybe there's just two options. None of the above. And then I'd select the correct one. And then I'd save it. And so this is how it's going to appear to students. So yes, you can add images, you can add video, you can add links, you can add really anything that you can add to anything with the HTML editor. What do you mean by do I limit time for class period, or is it for homework? Do you mean like if the class was Monday, Wednesday at 2 p.m. that do you only allow them to do these things from 2 to 3 p.m. or whatever? I would not be that rigid, especially in what's going on right now. I think we want to be as flexible as possible. Like I was saying before, we can't expect our students to be available still Monday, Wednesday at 2 p.m. even though we had class during that time, because their kids are, you know, not going to daycare, and again, they might be having to work and all of that kind of stuff. So I recommend being as flexible, kind of thinking about it on a week by week basis. So like this week, these are all the things that I want you to do. Like this is what we would have done in class. You can certainly have like checkpoints throughout the week, but just recognizing, I think for me personally, and I'm not wearing CCC's hat in this messaging, but I think in terms of what's going on right now is to be the most flexible that you can be. and recognize that even if you do want to keep some kind of consistent schedule for the students' sake, for structure, being lenient in terms of students who have extraneous circumstances. Shall I wait for 1.5 time in? So I will just say for the test, like you can still put a time limit on the test itself in terms of like they only get 60 minutes to take it, but not restrict it like they can only take it from 2 to 3 p.m., like making it. So I would say like, you know, if they have to take the test, I'm going to open it on Monday, but they have to take it by Friday. Like I might do that start and end date, but then how much time they can spend on the test, I might limit that to you only get 60 minutes on this test if they were going to get 60 minutes in class. Hopefully that helps. Any other questions? You're welcome. I'm going to stop recording.